So we'll go ahead and get started. We are talking today about feline enrichment and appropriate play as our topics today. So, seedlings, you're totally fine. I will happily teach anybody about cats at any time. Nobody else has to be present. These presentations are happening regardless because they're now being recorded and being put on the YouTube channel. So even if you're the only person here, they're still going to happen. Or even if no one shows up, they're still going to happen because we're putting them up on the YouTube channel. So today's focus is really just letting cats be cats and making sure that we're giving them appropriate outlets for being cats. So all of us who are familiar with cats know that cats spend a really large quantity of time sleeping, but we still need to make sure that despite the fact that they spend most of their time sleeping, we need to provide appropriate outlets for their energy and natural behaviors. So we're going to be discussing how we can do that. And the goal for this is not just to make the cat easier to deal with or reduce hassle and make it convenient for you. It's to provide enhanced welfare for them in your home. So there's a few ways that we can do this. We have a little video here. So we want to do this through a multitude of methods. Play, visual, tactile, auditory, and olfactory stimuli all play a role. Physical exercise itself, like Ghost likes to take Blue out on his harness. That's a fantastic type of exercise for him. Cats also benefit from brain games. We want to make sure that we're also providing that cat-friendly furniture as well as vertical spaces for them to provide for those behavioral needs. These things appeal to the natural behaviors and senses of the cat, which we talked about last week in our normal behavior and basic needs presentation. And the more we provide for these behaviors and sensory needs, just like with dogs, the lower the likelihood of behavioral problems with our kitty cats, because they're not having to find their own ways to channel this energy and these behaviors. So let's talk about appropriate play between cats. So if you live in a multi-cat household, most people want their cats to get along and play well together. And that, with cats, looks like the cats should be taking turns as far as who is the quote-unquote aggressor or who is instigating play. Cats may wrestle, they might chase each other, and then they may also practice some hunting behaviors like stalking, ambushing, pouncing, those sorts of behaviors. Now, it can get really rowdy and it can sound like it's out of control, but if we're still seeing this role reversal and nobody's hissing or growling or indicating stressed body language, then we still have cohesive play and it's all right. We do want to make sure that if we are noticing hissing, growling, a lack of role exchange, or stressed body language, so ears back, hard staring eyes, fast switching tail, those sorts of things, that we're recognizing it's no longer play. And when we recognize that it's no longer play, we need to make sure the cats are separated. If you know this is a trend between your cats, like they'll play well for a couple of minutes and then somebody gets upset, try to cut play short so that they're not getting into that mode where one is getting upset. In doing so, we're going to help them both regulate their arousal levels, and we're going to prevent breakdown of bonding and trust with each other because we're preventing the practicing of bullying, basically, is what that boils down to. If you have a cat that is always the instigator and is kind of, beating up on the other cat, they're a bully. And it may not be that the cat is doing it to be a bully or because there's an actual problem that the bullying cat perceives. Sometimes it can be what's called play aggression, where they don't really know how to play appropriately. They take things too far, and they're not recognizing the signals that the other cat is giving them because they are so involved in play. Sometimes we see that in dogs, but we also see that in cats. So those are just some things to be aware of. Now, when we play with cats as people, we want to make sure that we're mimicking their hunting behaviors as much as possible. So we want to make sure that we're moving our toys in prey-like patterns and letting the cat, quote unquote, catch and kill it towards the end of play. And that helps to keep their normal behavioral rhythm of the day in sync. So great times to play would be like right before mealtime for cats. Because as we talked about last week, the cycle of their day goes hunt, kill, eat, groom, sleep, repeat. And that's just kind of the cycle of their day. When we are playing with our kitty cats, we want to use what's called a boil and simmer pattern. So what this does is it helps to prevent overstimulation and it helps to give them a break. Cats are not endurance athletes. They are not like your dog that will fetch for 20 minutes at a time. We should be playing for only about 5 to 10 minutes at a time because of how they're naturally built. They need short bouts of intense play with some recovery time between those bouts of intense play. So even in this 5 to 10 minute session, you don't want it to be just 5 to 10 minutes of wild play. You want to do like 30 seconds of, really intense play and then a minute or two to come back down and recover. And then like 30 seconds of really intense play and then a minute or two to come back down and recover. And we can do that as we're mimicking those hunting behaviors. We can do that by moving the toy really, really quickly and getting the cat really worked up, and then the toy stops for a second and makes some slower movements as the cat kind of moves into that stalking ambush mode. They're given that recovery time. Does anybody have any questions about play with cats? Okay, I see Goats is typing. Is play aggression more common in cats or dogs? Is it more noticeable in one? I would say that play aggression is, in my experience, this is anecdotal, in my experience, is more common in cats, particularly juvenile to adolescent kittens, than in dogs. I see dogs that they don't really have good play styles, but they don't necessarily get into what turns into actual aggression nearly as much as I do with cats. And I would say if you are savvy in your body language and your monitoring of the animals in your care, it's more noticeable in cats because their body language is so overt, if that makes sense. Whereas our dogs may have more subtle body language comparatively. And now, I know last week we talked about, feline body language and those sorts of things. And to someone who isn't really savvy in body language in general, cat body language tends to be more subtle than dog body language, generally speaking. But if you're honed in, you'll see those signals from the cat, I feel, more readily than from dogs because cats are so communicative in their body language to each other. And so, again, you'll see like stillness, that fast twitching tail, ears back. They communicate in larger signals than the dogs if you're paying attention. So we're going to talk about sensory stimuli. Entertaining visual stimuli is usually prey. So cat TV is a really great source of visual enrichment. You can use, especially now that we have these really nice TVs these days that have, LED displays and those sorts of things. We're noticing that dogs and cats are paying attention to televisions more, most likely because they're able to see the images better on them. So you can use things like nature documentaries, or you can have like your blinds open or curtains open and let them watch through a window or a glass door. And it's really enriching often when it's paired with olfactory and auditory stimuli. So, like if you have the window open and the cat's in the windowsill, they can see, they can hear, and they can smell those birds chirping and those squirrels darting through your yard. It's very enriching, it's very stimulating for them. And catios are a really great option to help facilitate this because they're completely screened in. And a lot of them will have like multiple tiered platforms so the cat can get up really high and really be able to observe while lounging and enjoying the outdoors safely. There's a significantly lower risk of injury, illness, escape, those sorts of things with the use of a catio. And so especially if you have a cat that is declawed, which we don't condone, but there are those cats out there that are declawed. This is a really fantastic way to let them enjoy the great outdoors if they like going outside, but it's not safe for them because they don't have their claws. We need to talk about our cat-friendly furniture as well. So we talked last week about providing appropriate scratchers. We need to make sure that we're providing those for cats because they're doing multiple things when they're scratching furniture. They're marking visually, they're marking with scent, and then they're also exercising the muscle group in their chest and forelimbs, as in addition to actually like maintaining their claws. So this is a multi-function behavior, which means that we need to make sure that this is a priority in providing appropriate outlets for. So we want to make sure we provide textures and appropriately constructed surfaces for them to scratch on to decrease the likelihood that they're going to scratch in areas we don't want them to. And what that means is we need to consider what the cat prefers for textures and what they prefer for like angles of surfaces and those sorts of things. A lot of people will buy these tiny little cardboard box scratchers that the cat has to like sit on, and they're all scrunched up, and they're just all they can do is kind of pick at it. That's not going to satisfy a cat who doesn't enjoy scratching that way. Many cats prefer to have vertical scratchers so that they can really get a good stretch in while they're scratching. So cat trees are a really great way to accommodate that. So they get their vertical surfaces. They also get their scratching posts. They often have sisal rope around the scratching post so that it's a nice texture. A lot of cats really enjoy that texture. Some cats really prefer the corrugated cardboard, and you can get some really nice cardboard scratchers that are, they have different shapes and they're different sizes and they have different angles to them. Some cats really prefer carpet, and so you can get like a carpeted cat tree to help with that. We really just want to make sure that we are accommodating what the cat prefers. Otherwise, they're not going to scratch on it. And then you're going to be mad because your couch is all scratched up because they might prefer that instead. So, vertical spaces are also super important for cats. Cats have a tendency to prefer to survey their surroundings, which enhances their ability to be confident in their environment and have a sense of safety. That's supposed to be safety, not safely. So, when you can see your territory and you can observe your territory, you're automatically going to feel safer there. And again, going back to the last slide, those vertical spaces should include textures that the cat enjoys scratching, comfortable nesting spots, and even some areas to hide in. A lot of cat trees have like little caves on them, which I think is great. Some cats really enjoy those because they want to be somewhere that's closed in and they feel safe. Other cats like to use those caves to ambush people walking by as part of their self-entertainment. So really, we just want to make sure that we're allowing the cats to have a safe space where they can also exercise, they can play by themselves, or just be kind of up and away from things that they may find unpleasant to interact with. This is one of my number one recommendations for homes with a cat and a dog in conflict or multiple cats in conflict. We get some vertical spaces in there. They can get up and away from each other. They can feel confident. They can observe the goings on. And we're meeting those needs in that way. It's a really easy solution for a lot of things that have to do with conflict. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, I don't see anybody typing, so I'm going to keep going. Physical exercise. This is another one that we want to make sure that we're accommodating. So, like I mentioned earlier, Goats walks Blue on a harness frequently, and he loves it. That's the key. They need to love it. We want to make sure that we're incorporating all of these things to accommodate physical exercise, even if it is just play in the home, because not every cat is cut out for going outdoors on a harness, because that's important for their health and wellness. So while these guys are natural athletes, they are not endurance athletes, unless you count napping as an endurance sport. You can train them to perform feline agility. This is usually not nearly as intense as canine agility, to wear and walk on with a harness and leash, and other activities that we have previously mentioned as well, to provide these physical energy outlets to keep these guys happy and healthy. Brain games are another big one. So just as their bodies need exercise, their brains need exercise as well. We want to make sure that if your cat is one of those that needs a lot of mental stimulation, that we're trying different things. Puzzle feeders are really great for a lot of cats. It can help them use their problem-solving skills in ways to keep them out of mischief. So you can use like food dispensing balls. There are towers and tubes requiring them to use their paws to like push the kibble off a platform so it drops down, or prey model toys for them to hunt down. These are all really fantastic options for cats, especially if you do feed a dry food for your cats, to give them that mental stimulation in addition to all of the other things that we have discussed. Now, if your cat doesn't find it fun, it's not enrichment. I'm going to say that here and now. I have personally experienced this with my own cat, who decided that she was going to go on hunger strike rather than use a puzzle feeder. So, please make sure that whatever it is that you're giving your cat for enrichment, they are actually enjoying. It's a pretty short presentation today. What questions do you guys have? And yes, Goats, you got multiple shout outs because you show us so often the really, really awesome care that you take of Blue with taking him out on the harness to provide those needs for him. I cannot make you your own slide right now, but I can in the future. All right. Any other questions? Oh gosh. Okay, unrelated question. Go for it. Oh, is Jackson Galaxy a good person to follow? Generally speaking, I would say Jackson Galaxy is a good person to follow regarding basic feline behavior and needs. He is really great about addressing the lack of cat friendly spaces. He's really great about identifying root causes of behaviors and how to address them. There are a couple of things that I've seen from him that I didn't like, but in those contexts, it was less that was his go to method and more it was his compromise because of client unwillingness to comply with the recommended exercises. And by that I mean the one I can recall off the top of my head was an episode where an owner didn't want the cat in the bedroom, didn't want to do any, like, flat out refused to do any training on it or concede in any way on that. And they ended up deploying an air sprayer to deter the cat. Not at all my favorite to use, but I do understand that he was limited in his options considering the client pushback on that one. So, yeah, I would say overall he's a good person to be following. Is it normal, common, controversial for shelters to capture, neuter, release, and do ear tipping for feral cats? I would say it's very common for TNR programs. So TNR stands for Trap, Neuter, Release. It is intended to help with population control and decrease the spread of viruses like FIV, which are typically spread male to male through conflict during fights over females in season. Um, there's some debate as to the efficacy of it, but that said, I know a lot of people do appreciate it. As far as controversial, I think that depends on where you're from. There are some countries where it is illegal to spay and neuter pets outside of medical need. But I believe those countries also don't have the same kind of stray slash feral cat issue that many others that have TNR programs do experience. Ear tipping is a really great way to indicate that the cat has been TNR'd because, unlike dogs, cats don't have a fairly hairless patch on their abdomen in order to put like a spay tattoo or neuter tattoo. And so if they're taking just the tip of the ear, and I say that because I've seen some TNR ear tippings that they lopped off almost the entire ear. If they're taking just the tip of the ear, it's not harmful to the cat. They recover very quickly. The risk of infection is very low. It doesn't really have, to our knowledge, an impact on their ability to hear or anything like that, which is why they opt for ear tipping. How do I feel about cats being outdoor versus indoor? From the research you've done, it's been mostly against outdoor cats. Also, have you heard about Australia? So, I come from a fairly neutral standpoint. My personal preference would be for pet cats. I say that way on purpose, that pet cats be indoor animals. Pretty much strictly, unless they're like out on a harness type of thing. There's just so much risk of illness and injury with them being indoor outdoor, as well as the impact that they have on local wildlife, which is why places like New Zealand have banned cats altogether. They are one of the greatest threats to natural wildlife, such as birds, squirrels, etc., because cats are voracious hunters and they're highly effective hunters as well. So, that said, I do also understand the role that outdoor cats play in some areas, such as if you have a farm. Most farms have barn cats or farm cats who are there to keep the property as free of vermin as possible. So I do understand the practical application of that, but I would not consider them pet cats. And I would not consider the use of them appropriate in all areas, if that makes sense. I also have not heard about Australia. Can you expand on that? Side note, even though I feel that all pet cats should be indoor only except with supervised outdoor time, I do also firmly believe that no cat should ever be declawed outside of medical necessity. So I'm just going to put that out there. A year or two ago, Australia made it legal to hunt outdoor cats because they were killing so many native animals and causing issues. I am not surprised by that, to be completely honest, and I would not be surprised if that's still in effect because, again, domestic cats are incredibly threatening to natural wildlife. New Zealand's natural or native bird species populations have just been absolutely decimated by uh, domestic felines hunting them. So it's, when you have an animal of any kind, you have a responsibility to it that is not just its care and welfare, but also to keep it from being a problem. So it's not just, dogs that are running loose and end up, biting people or other dogs or what have you. It's also cats that are allowed outside to roam and be their predators selves, but have a severe negative impact on native wildlife species. So we have so many responsibilities as pet guardians in regards to not just the care of them, but also ensuring that they are not a nuisance or problematic to others. And I don't feel that everybody takes that quite as seriously as they should. But hopefully that will continue to change. I personally feel that there's been improvement on that in the last few years, and hopefully that trend continues. All right, what other questions do you guys have? Yes, goats, you're my favorite goat. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation then. Next week, I believe, let me check the schedule really quick before I make false promises. Let's see here. Next week, we're going to be talking about feral dogs, their behavior, um, and so we're going to be differentiating between wild, feral, and other types of dogs and discussing their normal behaviors. And then after that, we'll be talking about canine body language as well.